Good evening and welcome to the Rockland Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, September 7, 2001. Please stand and join us as Selectman Ryan leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by WRPS for playback on Comcast Channel 14 and Verizon Channel 31. It's also available live online at www.wrpsrockland.com/TV and within 24 hours via video on demand at www.youtube.com/WRPSRockland. Please go to wrpsrockland.com for further information. Okay, first on the agenda, community announcements. Special town meeting, Monday, September 13, 2021. Doug?
That's the announcement.
That's it. Excellent. Great job. Nice and easy. All right, next on the agenda, minutes. Review and approval of minutes of August 10, 2021. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of August 10th, 2021.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Next on the agenda, new business. Cub Scout Pack 12 recruiting at Town Hall Plaza, 9/18/21 from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Is Terry Davidson in the room?
Terry's not, but I believe we have Adam Heckman actually here.
That's me.
Okay, come right up.
Is your name okay? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Adam Heckman. I'm here representing Rockland Cub Scout Pack 12.
Excellent. So what is it that you guys are specifically looking to do, Adam?
So there is a council-wide, we are in the Mayflower Council, council-wide recruitment drive on Saturday, September 18th. So from 10 to 2 p.m., 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Town Hall Plaza. We're going to set up a pop-up tent, a couple of tables, some displays, maybe a game for the kids. And we've been distributing some flyers and advertising on Facebook, and we're trying to recruit new scouts.
Okay.
Excellent.
I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the Cub Scouts using the Town Hall Plaza on September 18th from 9 to 2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Great.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
coming.
much.
Glad to have you guys.
All right, next on the agenda, Boy Scout Troop 57, 9/11 Remembrance Walk at Bicentennial Park. Matt Rogers. How are you, Matt?
Where are you?
How are you?
Oh, good evening. I'm Matt Rogers with Troop 57 here in Rockland, and I would like to request permission to host the 20th anniversary 9/11 Remembrance Walk at the Bicentennial Track on Reed Street from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. this coming Saturday.
How many years have you been doing this, Matt?
It's been going on since 2008.
How about you specifically? All those years?
I think my first year was 2017, maybe.
And you've come before us before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were familiar. Getting older, though. We all are, I guess. Rich.
Not all.
Okay. So what time is the Remembrance Walk at?
9 a.m. to
9 to 11?
9 to
11
11? Okay. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve, and that's this Saturday, right?
Yeah, 9/11.
Okay, yep. This Saturday from 9 to 11.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for doing this.
See you next year.
Appreciate it.
Okay, moving right along. Next on the agenda, Fall Festival. Recreation Director Jean Blaney and Farmers Market Coordinator Allison Lee. Back again.
Is this 3 in a row?
It might be. It
I
might
was
be.
going to say, you're here more than I am.
I will never take this seat.
Thank you.
Sorry that this came in a little late. We were just waiting for some additional details. So we're back again to talk about bringing a fall festival to Union Street, and it would be a combination of the Rockland Farmers Market, the Touch a Truck event that we usually do, and in working with Reimagine Rockland, we thought that it would be a great idea just to bring it all up to Union Street to help with that downtown revitalization. Maybe kind of get it started again, because, you know, we had COVID, I'm not gonna say we're out, but, you know, it's just different now. So, so we're hoping that this will start to foster some of that downtown revitalization. The dates, October, do you want me to keep talking, or you want to talk? You can-
You get it.
Okay. So the date's October 9th, and it's a Saturday from 1 to 5 p.m. We've spoken with all the necessary departments, police, fire, highway, and we already have some volunteers kind of rolling through the door, which is great. So we have our Touch a Truck event, and at that event, we usually do a candy drop. So we're gonna line one side of the street with all of the trucks. We're gonna have a kid zone at the library. We've included all the businesses.
On Union, I've kind of gone up and just to
Talk
see,
to each.
if they want to participate and given them the kind of open field
Yep.
to see what they want to do as long as it's approved, Board of Health and whatnot.
How's the response been to that so far?
Pretty good. I think most people, I'm learning there's a lot more that's just at the face of Union Street. But it seems to be that people want to get out and be in front of people. The stroll is an amazing event, and I think it's kind of like mirroring that. People want to come out and just hang out.
We're in the process of securing a chef to do a food demonstration in front of the community center. We're going to have a beer and wine garden. That'll be sectioned off, of course, just like we do for the farmers market. You can't leave the area with alcohol. You can't walk down Union Street with it. Sorry, you got to stand there. But there'll be food trucks there. There'll be food trucks. And then we were going to talk to a few of the pizza places to place a QR code so that maybe they could deliver right there. And then in addition, we've got
few other
30
30 plus vendors, obviously the Rockland Farmers Market vendors. I'm going to bring in the last date, and then we'll section them off by kind of, whether it be beauty products or kids-driven stuff will be at the library.
Wellness.
The wellness, we do have the farm. We're not exactly sure where we'll position that, but we have the blessing of Doughboy to use in front and maybe the town to use the side parking lot. Rockland Trust has given us the availability of the parking lot that they have next to Uptown's Finest. And then the other side, it kind of wraps around. We'll have the side. And then, all the way down to, I think it's School Street is where we're going to stop.
Is that where it's, all right, so from School Street up to the
Up to-
community center?
Right.
Yeah, to North Ave. But like we said, the community center is going to be roped off. We'll have some picnic tables and stuff in there, and I think 2 police details will be in there. Probably some live music, which I'm going to try to get some local people there, and then possibly a DJ if we can secure it at the town hall. And then we'll have the food trucks kind of spread about, not impeding on the businesses that serve food, but maybe like Lolly Jolly down near where the kids section is, things like that.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Our plan for in front of Town Hall, we're still kind of working it out, maybe a pumpkin patch. We might have a photographer down here to take pictures, it would be for purchase, but
Yep.
we're trying to secure that photographer, so. There's a lot of details that we're still working out, but the bulk of it, really to make sure that police and fire and highway and all the necessary departments are involved. Yeah. And Reimagine Rockland, they've been great,
Yeah, really great.
yeah.
Any questions from the board?
Nope, looks like an excellent plan.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to volunteer, they can certainly call the office, because we're gonna need a lot of volunteers for this event. It takes a big community to kind of throw this together and make it something special. So, for this event, for the stroll, I have a lot of other smaller events that I do over the years. So, any kind of volunteers, you can just come my way. Kids need service hours.
Yep.
We've got lots of things going on for them.
Beautiful.
So we're just asking for the board's approval.
Any other questions or comments?
The only comment is, again, amazing what you guys are doing. I don't think people realize the time, the effort, the energy that you put into this event. And for Gene, it's not just this event. It goes on and on and on. It's just, the town's very, very fortunate and lucky to have you guys. And just thank you.
Yes, thank
Thank
you
you.
for that comment, and hopefully there's more to come.
Okay. All right. It's great. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the Fall Festival on October 9th.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
unanimous.
Thanks,
Quick
guys.
question while we have you guys here. You guys have a farmer's market this Saturday?
We sure do.
Maybe do a plug for that? The
So
community?
this weekend, we're kind of trying to do a 9/11 memorial without taking, obviously, I think they do one here in Bicentennial. We don't want to take
Fire
away.
station.
Yeah, so we're going to do a moment of silence as the market opens. And then we're going to do a donation collection for the 9/11 Memorial Museum, because they're having a tough time right now due to COVID. They can't be open fully. And they work a lot. It's not just 9/11. It was the bombings in 1993, I think. I'm not positive. But anyways, their organization, I think a lot of the vendors, my booth, Happy Soul Handcrafted, is going to donate 10% of our proceeds that day, right straight to the donation. And hopefully we can collectively, as Rockland, maybe even get like a cobblestone in their area, because if you get up to 1,000, you can get those. That'll be cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, anybody, any other questions? Okay.
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Great job. Keep it up. All right, next on the agenda, Cultural Council appointment, Jane Tetzloff and Rob Rosa.
So Mike, Jane is not able to come tonight, but my understanding is she was on the board for a number of years in the past, and so she's a known entity. Rob is also a known entity, but he was able to come tonight.
Yeah.
I just wanted to explain why.
How
he
you
wasn't
doing?
able to come.
How are you, Rob?
How are you, Rob?
Rob Rosa. Shoot.
You know,
What's,
Rob, it's really, really easy to get fished in here. If you come before us and say you'd like to learn to do a job, we're going to appoint you in.
No, I understand.
And we're happy to have you.
And I appreciate that. I just want you to know that from a very young age, I've traveled in every art circle you can think of, music, visual arts, literary. I feel like this is the next step in my evolution within this town. So,
Gotcha.
with your permission,
So this is your passion, not zoning?
I'm supposed to be at that meeting right now. But it's all a part of it. It's all a part of it. This town has been very good to me, and if there's some way that I can help give back, then this is just a part of it as far as I'm concerned.
Appreciate that.
So I'll entertain a motion for approval of both Jane Tetzloff and Rob Rosa.
Absolutely a approval for both Rob and Jane on the council.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you very
Unanimous.
much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Select
Rob.
Board.
Thanks, Rob.
Appreciate it.
Rob, thank you.
Now get to zoning.
On my way.
Next on the agenda, holiday stroll, Pam Murphy.
So Pam asked to reschedule. She had something come up at the last minute. She has to
Okay.
be on the agenda for the next meeting on the 21st.
Okay, perfect. Okay, next on the agenda, town treasurer, vacancy and transition until next town election. Doug?
Sure, so I think our town treasurer, Donna, may be coming in shortly, but I'll just announce for the public, I think the board is already aware that John has received an offer to be an appointed treasurer-collector in another nearby community, which he's accepted, so we're very happy for him. It's an excellent opportunity to step up to that joint treasurer-collector position. I was talking to John just last week about timing, next steps. There's a lot of logistics we need to sort out during the transition. All the work that everybody does is important, but the treasurer's job is really critically important for the operations of the town. So tentatively, what we've talked about is that he'd continue working through the end of the month and actually into the first week of October. It would not be full-time. He'd be kind of splitting his time a little bit, going back and forth. But he really wants to be able to see us through that first week of October, because he's going to be refinancing, which the technical term is refunding, some bonds that the town has previously issued, so we can get a better interest rate. So I appreciate the fact that he wants to see us through that process. So on Tuesday, October 5th, we have a board meeting. That's when he'd present the bond refunding, get your approval and signatures, et cetera. Then the end of that week, Friday the 8th, would most likely be his last day on the books in the town of Rockland. I've already started putting out the feelers, getting some recommendations and talking to some folks who might be an appropriate interim town treasurer that could bridge the gap between October 8th and when the next town election would be in April. So the plan would be we'd have an interim come in, then the next town in April, there'd be a new election and a new treasurer. I've spoken to someone who I think will be a good fit for that. I'm going to be meeting with them shortly. My recommendation would be that I present that final name to you at your next meeting, and then you could make that appointment then based on the later date of, I think it's October 11th or 12th, whatever that Tuesday is after Columbus Day.
Right.
And with that, maybe I'll turn it over to John, because he is here now.
Yeah. Sorry, you guys went a lot quicker than I was expecting.
Yeah, sorry, me too. So first, John, I wanted to just, one, congratulate you and also thank you for your 8.5 years
Sure.
with the town of Rockland. And obviously, it's a tremendous opportunity, especially at this point in your career, to have that security where, as opposed to running for a position every 3 years and not knowing who's going to come out of the woodwork. But so thank you from the board for the 8.5 years. You've done a great job, and you really turned that department around for us. So we appreciate everything you've done.
Sure.
And wish you well.
Thank you.
Anybody else, comments?
No, I mean, I've known John for a lot of years, and, when he first ran and became treasurer, and, how that department has evolved since he's been here, it's a little bittersweet,
It is
after
for me,
almost
too.
9 years.
Yeah.
But from a personal standpoint, it sounds like a great opportunity for you. So I'm happy for you and the family. I also want to say thank you for working with Doug and your new employer and coming up with a transition plan that works for both,
Yep.
and getting us through the key period with that.
Yeah, I want to
with
be
the
here
bond.
for the bond refunding, because I think that's important to get that button down before I go. It should be a pretty good savings for the town when we do that, so,
So, thank you.
sure.
I also want to say thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you,
John.
John. Wish you well in your new
Right.
endeavor.
Yep, we
Appreciate
do
all
wish
that.
you well.
Thank you.
You got a good family. They're all involved in the world. Things are going good for you. Keep it rolling.
I will.
So from a technical and legal standpoint, where do we go from here? What are the next steps for,
Yeah.
I know,
Sure.
have you filed anything with the clerk's office?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
I just wanted to be sure that the 8th really works
Okay.
for you all, that I can leave
Okay.
that day. So I
Yeah,
figured we don't need to do it tonight. We can
Yeah.
do it closer to the
Yeah,
8th in
we're
case.
completely okay with, we're
Yeah.
completely okay with that.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm just not sure, are there any limitations from bringing somebody on board, interviewing and hiring somebody and having them train with John before an official resignation?
Well, but before I answer that, let me just go back to what you two were just saying, because I
Yep.
think you might have been saying different things. I think what John was just asking was about giving a letter closer to the 8th, but what I think you were saying that's okay is that the 8th, as being the last day, was okay.
Yeah, we're
But I-
totally okay with the 8th being okay.
Right, but that's
I'm
not
just-
what John, so you might, I
Okay.
just think you
No, I'm
might
just
want to
wondering
clarify
if,
that.
from a legal standpoint, what we're able to, do you know, do you know this?
I mean, I would think, you would bring him in as a consultant or something ahead of that, and don't call him the treasurer
Yeah.
until October 11th or 12th, whatever that
Okay.
Monday is, or however when you appoint him, or her, whoever it is, effective October 12th, this person will be the interim
Be the
treasurer. So he or she could be here ahead of that on a consulting basis or something like that, just not call the treasurer until my formal last day would be my approach to that, my
Yeah.
suggestion to that.
Yeah, I think like a compromise that would work best would be if by your next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today, if you submit your letter in writing so it's official, and then, because I suspect I need to contact our auditors. I think there's probably
Probably the
just like,
auditors-
I think the auditors have their like standard stuff they're going to want to just, and no disrespect, there's like, this would
Yeah.
be with any treasurer, it's, so I think if we could have a letter to the clerk on file by our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And at that meeting, we'd also hire a consultant, as John said, just as a consultant, but you could also vote that night to have that person be the interim treasurer effective that Tuesday,
Effective
October
the
12th.
date
And
I think that would just be the simplest
And
way
I
to
think
do
the
it
letter
from my
has the
perspective.
effective date, whatever
Yeah.
that effective
That's
date would be. And just maybe find out from John Clifford, you know, what, if any legalities we may or may not be missing as it pertains to, you know, to John's point, bringing somebody on as a consultant to fill that role and, in the meantime. And I know you looked into, when are you starting in Mansfield?
Splitting time starting tomorrow.
Wow, that happened fast, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They couldn't wait, could they?
No, they're ready for me right now, so this
Awesome.
is
Okay.
trying to balance the two.
Okay, so it sounds like we got a plan going forward, and, you know, like I said, John, you know, you've been great for the town, you've been great for that office and that department, and we're certainly gonna miss you, so, thank you, appreciate it.
I'll miss being here, so.
You still live here, right?
I'm still living here.
Okay,
Still,
good,
yes.
Good, so we'll
So I'm
still
not
see you around.
going away totally, so.
All right, so,
Anybody talk to the tax assessors about his taxes going up?
Yeah, the discount goes away now that I work.
okay, there's no discount. All right.
Kidding, it's a joke.
It's a joke, thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you, John.
Thank you.
Other new business not reasonably anticipated?
I have none.
Nothing, okay. Old business, special town meeting, Monday, September 13th, 2021. Yep.
Yeah.
And,
Glasses would be helpful.
All right, great. So I'm going to, when I get to the open space article, I'd like to show you the latest draft of the presentation that I've prepared, because there's an issue or two to discuss, and I'd also appreciate any feedback you might have on the presentation. It also gives the public an opportunity to get a little preview as well. But before I go into this particular article, why don't I just quickly, once again, for the public's benefit, just go through the warrant quickly so people have a heads up about what we're going to be talking about at town meeting. So the first three articles are the floodplain bylaw. That's the same article, excuse me, the same article that we discussed at our last annual town meeting, which did not pass. Since that time, we've been sort of suspended or removed from the National Flood Insurance Program when we're ineligible for a variety of different types of federal grants and assistance. Also, since that time, our Assistant Town Administrator, Jen Constable, has done a ton of work helping sort of revive this for another discussion at town meeting, and that also included at the Planning Board's public hearing a much more thorough discussion. Jen personally did an excellent detailed presentation, and she also brought in officials from FEMA and from the state that could also answer some technical questions. Those same officials or their counterparts from FEMA and from the state will also be able to be at town meeting as well to answer any questions. We also had our land use attorney at the public hearing. He will also definitely be at our town meeting. You know, between the four of them, I believe, and Jen can correct me if I'm wrong, that they really addressed everybody's concerns, you know, that were raised, and I think satisfactorily answered them. And my understanding was, coming out of that meeting, people felt very comfortable that now they had enough information to feel good about voting for it. Jen also reached out to the folks that did have concerns and spoke up at the last annual town meeting, and she personally reached out to them to give them additional information and make herself available. And she also created 2 different web pages on the town's website, which we pushed out with a lot of information, ways to look up your own property, what the implications are, all that stuff. So I feel like we've done a pretty decent job this time of being a little bit more proactive, and hopefully this will go very smoothly at this town meeting. I think it's really important for the community. The next is the open space land acquisition. Any questions on that one? I'll just keep rolling. All right. So I'm going to show you my presentation. It's not too long, and feel free if you want to interrupt me in the middle, or we can just stop at the end. So I'm briefly going to just summarize what the article is. Going to go over a map that shows the location so the community's aware of exactly where we're talking about. Look at some of the financing options that we considered. I'll talk a bit about the state grant requirements that we've pursued and our recommended financing. So in total, it's a little over 36 acres of land. The address is 0 Beach Street, known as the McCarthy Farm, but everybody will probably know it best as being across the street from the recycling center. And it's been an attractive property for our open space committee for a number of years, and it's already been listed in their open space and rec plan as a target property. Especially because of its size. There's not a lot of 36-acre undeveloped parcels, but it's also right in the corner of town that's contiguous to open space in Whitman and Hanson and in Rockland, so it's a really desirable piece. We're getting this opportunity because the current owner had received tax benefits over the years, agricultural benefits, because it was a working farm, and according to state law, which I've listed, Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, whenever a property that gets those benefits looks to change the use, they have to give the town the right of first refusal first. And they have a signed purchase and sale agreement with a developer who's looking to put in housing, and that purchase and sale price is $900,000. So we can't negotiate that price. It's not like a normal land transaction where you can, bargain. We are stuck by that price. In a couple of slides, I'm going to be referencing a different number, $930,000, and that's because we've added in some contingencies for other costs associated with legal fees, surveys, title work, closing costs, site work, et cetera. And then lastly, we did have 2 independent professional appraisals done. The average of those 2 appraisals came in at a little over $961,000. One was a little higher, one was a little lower. That's where the average was. Just to highlight the major boards that are recommending approval of this article. Obviously, you, the selectmen, the Open Space Committee, Community Preservation, Conservation, and the Finance Committee, and it is included on our capital plan. So it's got pretty widespread support. So the location on the lower left-hand corner, it's a sort of a funny-looking parcel. I believe I have a laser here. Yeah, here we go. So you'll see there's a house here, a house here, here, and here. We're not looking to acquire any of those houses. It's just this sort of toothed jigsaw piece area there. And you can see it's across from the recycling center. That's the capped landfill with the solar panels. And on the right, I thought it would be helpful to show the town zoning map, and then just to orient people, it's in the southwest corner of town. So getting to the financing, we considered every option that was legally available to us. So grants is always the first thing that we look for, and we are pursuing, and we have pursued and submitted a grant. We've talked about that at previous meetings. The maximum amount is what we've pursued, which is $400,000, and we're very hopeful that we'll receive that grant. So that's always at the top of every list. Another financing tool is a one-year capital expenditure exclusion. That's where voters would vote at town meeting and at the ballot to raise their taxes for 1 year and 1 year only to fully fund the project. And then after that, in year 2, that tax increase disappears and goes away. So it's a one-time bump. There's no borrowing, there's no debt, there's no interest. From a purely financial point of view, that's the cleanest way to fund something in this price range. Fully fund it, no extra cost is tacked on, and then it goes away. We're not pursuing that. We have other ways that we can fund it now, and we always try to avoid raising taxes whenever we can. Similarly, a debt exclusion, that's like what we've done for the school project. That's where you have generally much larger project costs that you need to spread and amortize over many, many years. You have interest and debt service schedules and all that. Again, that requires town meeting and a ballot vote, and this dollar amount isn't even large enough to really warrant a debt exclusion. There's always certified free cash, and our town accountant, Elizabeth Zaleski, made sure I put the word certified in there because you can't spend it until it's certified by the Department of Revenue. So certified free cash, when it's available, is always a good option. It's not going to be available in September. That's why we have a different recommendation. We all know what the Stabilization Fund is. That's our rainy day fund. That is something we're going to be looking to help with. And then lastly, there's Community Preservation Act funds. As we all know, there's 3 designated categories for the Community Preservation Act. There's open space and recreation, affordable housing, and historic preservation. So each of those have a 10% set aside. So the $47,400 is what's available in that 10% set aside for open space. The remaining 70% is in an undesignated fund, and we currently have estimated, and I stress estimated because the town accountant, the numbers change as we get receipts, state match, et cetera, is a little over $492,000. So that's our CPA funds that we have available. I've heard this from the community, so I thought I should put a sub-bullet in there. Well, why don't we just borrow against CPA receipts to fund the whole thing? And that is allowable, that is legal. Again, towns tend to do that for much larger projects, and they also tend to do it once their CPA is more established and they have more funds coming in. We're not at the full 3%, so if we did something like that, it would really eat up every year for many years, plus interest, a lot of our CPA funds, and we wouldn't be able to do a lot of other projects. So moving to the state grant, which was the first thing that I talked about pursuing, and I want to just thank again the Open Space Committee for their help in pursuing the grant and actually doing the dirty work to get it done and submitted. As is allowed by the state grant, our town meeting vote is contingent on receipt of the grant. So if we don't get the grant, the deal's off. The town meeting vote is null and void. The grant also requires that even though we may get the grant, and even though it's contingent on grant approval, they require that we fully fund and fully appropriate the entire amount, not the net amount, but the entire amount. And I think that has to do with like the reimbursable nature of the grant. So I mentioned on the earlier slide, the purchase and sale price was $900,000, and I'll show you more detail on the next slide. The grand total cost is $930,000. So we need to fully fund that at town meeting. But I just want to highlight again for the public, we'll never actually spend $930,000 from town funds. And as you can see on the bottom, if we get the grant, we'll spend $930 less $400 is $530,000 from town funds. And if we don't get the grant, we won't proceed. So this is probably the most, bless you, the most important slide. This is our recommended financing, and I just put a little image of a 3-legged stool because that's honestly in my mind how I thought about it, trying to balance the funding with 3 different avenues. So we've applied for this for the state grant. The CPA funds, as you saw earlier, what was available, we're looking at using essentially everything that's available in the open space reserve, plus $205,000 out of that $492 from the undesignated fund. So that totals $250,000. Then an additional $250,000 from the stabilization fund. That gets to our $900,000, which was the purchase price. Then the more we were working on this, the more we realized we really should add in some additional funding for the stuff Rich and I were just talking about. You can see what's listed there, all those other ancillary costs. That additional $30 would also come from the stabilization fund. Now I have a double asterisk there, a couple of footnotes, and I'm going to really stress this at town meeting that we can't appropriate free cash at town meeting because it's not certified by the Department of Revenue yet. But stabilization funds, when they're in the bank, are always available. My recommendation and the finance team's recommendation is that at our next annual town meeting, once free cash is certified, we look to put an article on the warrant to repay that full 250 plus 30, 280,000, repay that at the next annual town meeting in May. So ultimately it would become from free cash, but at this town meeting, it would be coming from stabilization. So,
And just to be clear,
sure.
that's from a timing perspective, because the free cash isn't certified, we can't access that.
Correct.
If we waited until town meeting, this
We'd
wouldn't
lose
be
the
available.
opportunity.
So the
Yeah.
only way to do it is
Correct.
to
That's a
to
good
tap
point.
into the stabilization fund and then look to repay that.
That's a very good point, and I'm glad you brought.
Placeholder.
Yep.
Just a placeholder until free cash is certified.
Yep. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the timing at the end of the presentation. It's a good point. So this article, if you look at the warrant, the article is very long and it's very complicated and it's not written like most of our other articles. And that's because the state required it be written a certain way to be eligible for the grant. So we buttoned that up. But you'll also notice that the language in the article, while it references certain different areas of funding, it's not specific about how much funding is coming from each source. So the way that we'll deal with that is there'll be a motion that's read, presumably from one of you, I imagine, that will be read at town meeting that will move to appropriate specific amounts from specific categories. And that's what I've laid out here. So it's $45,000 from open space, $205 from the CPA undesignated fund, and then the balance, because we have to fully fund the whole thing, from stabilization. and I'm just again going to highlight to the public, but if we get the grant, which is all that matters, because if we don't get it, we don't do anything. If we get the grant, this is what we'll actually be spending. And then I should have highlighted earlier that there was a great public forum that the Open Space Committee held and I participated in. We got a lot of good feedback from folks. And one of the questions and suggestions was if there's no tax increase, we should really make sure to highlight that to people. So the purpose of that box is that CPA funds and stabilization funds, are already received. There's no tax increase associated with them. So I think this is a good point for me to briefly pause to highlight that the Finance Committee, while they did vote to recommend this article, they have since, or at least some of the members, have some concerns with this plan, and specifically the use of Stabilization Fund for this purpose. What they're questioning is if, instead of only appropriating $250,000 from the Community Preservation Act, why aren't we using every single penny of CPA funding? Because it's allowed, this is a use that's allowed for CPA funding. Why don't we essentially drain that account before we even begin to talk about the stabilization fund? So the town accountant and I talked about that quite a bit with them and said we don't feel it's responsible and that we really need to have some cushion in there for a variety of things. Again, we have commitments that we've already made, prior projects. Everything's based on assumptions with receipts, plus the fact that there's other projects that we're going to want to fund. So we just didn't feel it was appropriate. And that's why, again, going back to that three-legged stool, we tried to be balanced. They did request, though, that it could be revisited and reconsidered, and so we asked the Community Preservation Committee to hold a meeting to talk about that, which they did last week. They had a very long, thorough discussion, and ultimately, they were not comfortable with using every penny of CPA funds. They just don't feel that it's responsible, and I should highlight that you have to have CPA committee approval and recommended approval to spend any CPA money. So if they don't recommend spending the CPA funds, it doesn't matter what town meeting says, it's not legal, you can't do it. So where the CPA committee ended up ultimately was they agreed to go up by $15,000. So the $250,000 total would go up to $265,000, which could take $15,000 out of the stabilization number, which would also make that $265,000, to balance it, make them equal, which I think is we're fine with $15,000, we can live with that. I'm not sure that that's going to satisfy the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee has a meeting posted for tomorrow night, which is Wednesday the 8th, to talk about
so
this.
let's just say this then. Rich and I were in finance together for some time. Larry was a former Finance Committee member. When Rich and I were there and we established this fund, I appreciate how much they're the gatekeepers of this fund. So I think if we go on record and just give 100% assurances that from your office and from Biz's office, when you guys we start building the budget for next year, whatever free cash is certified, 100%, there's no way that amount does not get paid back to stabilization. And I feel comfortable, I think, making that promise. That you guys will go out of your way to make sure that happens.
I will second that. So particularly with you and I, we were on the Finance Committee to start actually funding that stabilization fund. It's important to have.
So I think that the complicated, let me say one thing, Biz, before I forget my thought, and then I'll go to you. Even if we do that, the Finance Committee is still concerned because they still feel like, why should we use free cash before we use every penny of CPA funding? So I'm just letting you know what their position is. I think that's still their concern, but sorry, Biz.
The only caveat to your motion or...
Well, it's not. It's just a recommendation.
Just a directive more. So.
Because if we don't have enough free cash, then we can't do that.
You read her mind.
But that was the thing is our very first.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
But as long as we have the positive free cash, the first thing we should look at is replenishing the stabilization.
280 comes right off the top.
I'm a little paranoid about free cash.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And she's like every other town accountant. They would all say the same thing. But
well, err on the side of caution. Sure.
So also on this is you've got recommendation from multiple boards, including a recommendation from the Finance Committee that they are for this. They may not be for how the funding source is, and I gave an example of the roads project, phase 1, where in the past the Finance Committee was in favor of the road project. They were not in favor of the funding. It went to town meeting, it passed at town meeting. So, and I appreciate what the finance committee does. I really, I mean, I was on it for 10 years, and I fully get the stabilization. But if we do go down the road of tapping virtually every dollar in the CPA, it takes us out for several years of being able to do virtually anything. Just like we did when we started the fund, for the first 2 or 3 years, we couldn't really do anything because we didn't have any funds in there. So if it sets us back on that side, just to keep the stabilization fund, because we can't go back and if free cash is available in May, we can't take the free cash and put it in the CPA fund.
Right.
We can use the free cash to go into the stabilization fund.
Right.
So if we wipe out, and I want to make sure that people understand that, if we wipe that out, if another opportunity presents itself for a large project or a piece of property, we literally won't be able to do anything.
Right, exactly.
What's the current balance of the stabilization fund?
Stabilization, you remember this?
Stabilization is $1,440,000, and that's effective, let's say, July. I'm still waiting for interest, et cetera, to be posted for August, but as of July.
What about amounts that we have borrowed during COVID?
During COVID, we repaid $100,000.
Yeah.
During the COVID, we also took $45,000 from closing out of articles and created our capital stabilization fund. And then additionally, we repaid some of the funding back to the OPEB trust fund.
Okay.
But the number you gave is net of all that, correct?
It's net of all that. All those transfers have been completed, so we're good. So 1.14, and calculation-wise, it comes up to be roughly, and these figures are based on last week, roughly 18% of the stabilization fund will go to purchase 36.3 acres for the town of Rockland. So.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see, you know, what if the finance committee tomorrow night, as a total board, you know, changes their mind and comes up with a different recommendation. I don't know. But again, there's not enough in CPA to fully pre-fund that whole 680,000, even if we want.
Without the CPC, it's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant without the CPA committee's recommendation, that's right. And I think they understand that. So I think now they're just talking about what do they recommend.
Yeah.
So that's a little last minute wrinkle. So I guess one question for you is, I was planning on leaving this the way it is, the numbers and the associated numbers in the motion, because the way we talked about it with the CPA committee was that if there was a motion made on the floor, that's how the previous finance committee discussions came about, like, well, maybe there'll be a motion on the floor to change the funding mix. And so that's why we had the discussion with the CPA committee, and they said they could go up 15,000 and shift it down. I'm inclined to leave it the way it is, and if we need to make that $15,000 swing, we can. Or we could make that $15,000 swing now and have the CPA funds and the stabilization funds be equal. I'll kind of look to direction for that, because it's 6 to 1, half dozen to the other.
I think as a sign of good faith to the finance committee, you know, we make that switch before we go in. If they're willing to go the extra 15,000, at least they're coming 50% to the table, as much as the finance committee is. I think that's symbolic anyway of their willingness.
That's fine.
Anybody else? Any thoughts? Rich, you starting to talk?
No, I'm fine with that.
Same way.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that the CPC is, you know, is working as hard as they can to try to do their part in this acquisition.
Yep. So I will make those changes. So what this will reflect is 265,000 for CPA and 265 on the right-hand box of the stabilization fund. It's still the full 680 down below. All right, great. Another comment that I received at the open forum we did with the Open Space Committee was, well, what's the process? Are there more town meeting votes? What's happening next? So we thought we'd put a little flow chart together, which I also kind of gets to Rich's earlier point about the timing. So pretend tonight is September 13th town meeting. That's what we're voting on tonight, would be the authorization, and I stress that word, authorization, for the selectmen, not only to have applied for the grant, but to complete the sale if we get that far. It's not a requirement, it's just an authorization. Now, concurrently, I mentioned that this whole thing was triggered by the right of first refusal because there's a signed purchase and sale agreement with a developer. So we have been speaking with that developer because there's other options the developers come up with where maybe we can both get something out of an arrangement where they can still, maybe the town, I'm just giving examples, maybe the town would decline its offer to purchase it, so we don't buy it. The developer buys it, constructs his housing complex in a relatively small portion of the acreage and donates all the rest of the land for free to the town. What would that look like?
That may include some existing housing lots?
Would not include houses. To the extent there's any small structures like sheds or barns, they would take them down. But just as an example, so that's an interesting concept. So instead of the town spending $500,000 to purchase 36 acres, maybe we could get most of it for free. So that's something that could be considered. Of course, the devil's always in the details. What would it look like? Would the housing completely disrupt the whole area, take all the uplands, and would we only be stuck with a bifurcated wetlands area? I mean, there's all these details, so we're going to continue having those discussions with the developer. Then later in the fall, October, November, we should get an award decision from the state. We find out if we get that award. Again, if we don't get the grant, then our decision is made for us. Assuming we get that award, by December 2nd, and again, this gets to Rich's point about timing and not waiting until May for free cash to be certified, when we got notified in August about this opportunity of a right of first refusal under the law that I referenced earlier, we only have 120 days to exercise our right or not. And the mechanism to do that is at a formal public hearing with the Board of Selectmen. So no later than December 2nd, could be sooner, but no later than that, you'll need to have a public hearing to decide whether we're going to purchase it or not. And at that point, you'll have the town meeting decision, you'll have the state grant decision, and you'll have all the information that we have available from any discussions with the developer, and then you'll get input from the public, and then it's going to be a difficult decision. You guys have to balance and figure out what's ultimately in the best interest of the town. And then from there, if we choose to pursue it, there'd be a purchase and sales agreement and then a closing. And then on the night of town meeting, at that point, then I'll turn it over to the Open Space Committee, and they'll give a little bit of an explanation why, from their perspective, it's an important acquisition. So that's my presentation. I'm open to any comments either now or later, during the rest of the week if there's any that you have.
No.
One question?
Sure.
Thank you. Is there a scenario that if discussion was continued with developer and somehow that avenue somehow progressed and land was obtained from that opportunity and the grant was also achieved, could the town still utilize the grant? Or
I don't
is the
think we
grant
would.
just
I don't think
specific?
we would need it because
Okay.
in a scenario with a developer, we would be getting the land for free.
Yeah, we wouldn't have an
So there wouldn't be any
acquisition
cost to offset.
Okay, so the grant is solely in
From a purchase.
For the
purchase.
and specifically it's for the purchase of the entire parcel as open space. Well, I did receive some questions from the public. Well, can we buy it and develop it? Could we do all the? And the answer is no.
Right.
There's to get $400,000 from the state to buy open space. It has to be permanently deed restricted open space. You can't develop it. So they would never give us that funding if any portion of that was going to have a housing complex or any other type of development. And it's really on the contrary. The part of what makes our application so attractive to the state is because there's imminent development with a signed purchase and sale agreement. So that really rises up pretty high on their priority list.
Okay. And can you please remind me, when was the timing of the grant in terms of when we would hear back?
So I don't have an exact date because they didn't give us one, but I think in the October to November timeframe is when we should hear.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the presentation?
So I have excellent.
Thank you.
All right, great. Maybe I'll just stay here if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
And just continuing on with the warrant, the next article is Article 5, which is increasing salaries and compensation of the elected department heads. Again, not board or committee members. And there are 4 of them here because only town meeting can set those salaries, and that's just the standard 2% raise that everybody else got. Article 6 is something I've talked about at prior meetings, which is a salary adjustment, a market correction to the health agent salary based on a detailed salary comp analysis that our HR department did, and this was pursued at the request of the Board of Health. So I imagine they will be the ones taking the lead on that discussion at town meeting. But again, this brings that position up to an appropriate salary for the duties and responsibilities, and it's commensurate with what other health agents in our region and the South Shore, similar towns, are paying. It's been a tough time for health agents with COVID. There's been a lot of vacancies, and it's been difficult to retain folks. Article 7 is just paying unpaid bills from a prior year. That's kind of housekeeping. Article 8 is where we are making improvements to the wastewater treatment plant, funded from closing out a bunch of other articles that are that are completed. They came in under budget, just a variety of just kind of scooping up available sewer funds that were previously appropriated and consolidating them with other balances in the sewer department to be able to make improvements at the plant. I'm sure that will pass resoundingly because everybody understands the importance of maintaining our sewer plant. Article 9 similarly looks to consolidate available funding sources related to Hartsev Park and to put them in a new maintenance account so that they can continue to make improvements. As we just talked about earlier with our Recreation Director, Jean Blaney, they're doing great things there, and this will only help all the activities that we're doing at the park. And that is the warrant. Do you have any last questions on that?
Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Do you want to just stay there the rest of the meeting?
Yeah, I'll just stay here if that's okay.
All right, it's a little weird, but okay. Next on the agenda, other old business not reasonably anticipated.
I have none.
Okay. Town Administrator's Report and Correspondence. Doug?
Yep. Thanks, Mike. I have a few things. I do this sometimes where I thank staff for a variety of things, but in particular, I really wanted to give a shout out to our Highway Superintendent, Dave Taylor, Tom Rubel, our Building Inspector, John Lucas in the Building Department, and Mark Shum at the School Department. You know, they've all gone, everybody goes above and beyond, but just most recently, those four have really helped out tremendously with a variety of facilities issues that we've had. John Lucas was helping me out here with some improvements we had to make at Town Hall. And then there's been some complicated things at the library. There's a lot of water infiltration problems we've had at the library, and we've made some repairs, but it keeps finding new areas that haven't been repaired yet. And, you know, Dave Taylor's the highway superintendent. He could just stick to roads if he wanted to, but he's, you know, going above and beyond helping us come up with solutions for this, as has Tom Rubel, who, again, he could just be issuing permits and doing inspections and not going above and beyond. And similarly, Mark Shum has helped us with some really critical emergency repairs we had to make at the McKinley School. And it made sense for him to help because he has the knowledge, and the school also offers a lot of programs at that building, and it was really for their, it was helpful for them as well to make sure we had that building safe and open to the public. So I just want to thank them, and I'm beating a dead horse, I know, but just highlights the need that we need to work toward finding a way to fund some kind of solution for facilities.
Facilities.
Yep. And I won't get into details now, but I'm just kind of highlighting that I greatly appreciate all their help, but we, you know, Biz and I and the rest of the finance team are going to work overtime to try to find a way to do that. I've already spoken about the finance committee meeting tomorrow night, so I won't do that. I'll just highlight, maybe so the public knows, I know this board is aware, that we did schedule some training for all board and committee meetings throughout town to help them operate effectively. That's going to be conducted by our general legal counsel. And just for the public's benefit, some of the things that we're going to talk about include roles and responsibilities for board and committee members, how to interact and work with other town employees. We'll reiterate the town's discrimination and harassment policies, social media use, what is and is not appropriate for board and committee members, personal liability that may or may not exist for board members, open meeting law, and public records law. So I've gotten some really good feedback, and from the few people that aren't able to make it, you know, they want to know how they can get the information. So I'm excited that people are really enthusiastic about learning this, because everything that every board does is important and can be complicated, and especially when there's passionate public input, things can get tricky sometimes. So I'm looking forward to having that training for board and committee members. I also wanted to highlight that with Jen's leadership, we've been looking at infrastructure in town, kind of coordinating with water, sewer, and highway. And then most recently, we had some, and I just want to stress, preliminary discussions with the town of Abington since we share the joint waterworks with Abington, to look at whether it would be appropriate for each of us to use some portion of our ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan funding from the feds, to help us with some of the critical PFAS improvements that the waterworks has to make, like right now. So we're having some good discussions with them, and we think we might, we want to make sure that the two towns are on the same page, and I think we are, and so we'll fill you in when we have more firm concepts and numbers, but we have a good level of cooperation there. We appreciate that town manager coming over here to meet with us. I'm sure Mike will want to talk about it. I just was going to just highlight that we did have Police Appreciation Day last Saturday. I was happy to be there, and I'll let Mike talk more about that because he's really the impetus behind it. And then lastly, there will be a 9/11 ceremony, the 20th anniversary. Our veterans agent, Tim White, is working with Fire Chief Scott Duffy on coordinating that. It will be open to the public outside 9 a.m. on 9/11, right outside of Town Hall, in the area in front of Town Hall. And it's going to probably be about a 25 or 30-minute ceremony where there'll be a brief gathering announcement, a brief opening statement from our veterans agent. Members of the Rockland Fire and Police Departments and their honor guards will be there playing taps. There'll be a Pledge of Allegiance led by the veterans agent, and then the national anthem with the honor guard, an opening prayer. There will be a speech, and then the fire department will do their five-alarm call, moment of silence, and then a closing prayer. So I appreciate
What time did you say?
9 a.m. 9 a.m. On 9/11 in front of Town Hall outside. And that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Mr. Penny.
So just two things, it'll be brief. Reminder, town meeting, September 13th at 7 o'clock. This is how the town functions. So this is your opportunity to have a voice, and we hope to see a lot of people there and exercise that. So hope to see you there. And the open space land acquisition down on Beach Street. I've lived here my whole life. I can't remember, maybe it's happened, I can't remember the last opportunity the town had to purchase 36 acres and actually had the finances available to do it. This is the first that I can think of in almost 57 years. I think it's a great opportunity for the town. I hope that the townspeople feel the same way, because there are not, as Doug mentioned earlier, there are not a lot of 36-acre lots left in this town. So again, another reason to come out in town meeting and vote. So hope to see everyone there. That's it.
Thank you, Rich. Ms. Needham.
Hello, I would like to chime in and say that I agree on your 2 points. And last week, the Rockland students went back to school, and I wanted to wish everybody a great year. And this morning, the class of 2034, our kindergartners started. So I wanted to wish them a wonderful beginning of school. And that's about it, but good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Tiffany. Selectman Ryan.
Just one note to all the football players around the town. 2 names from the past. My son, Tom Ryan, he coaches Methuen High School now, and Reggie Newcomb, he coaches Marshfield High School, and they're going to meet in a big game up in Methuen on September 17th. And I know that a lot of the old coaches and stuff are going to be coming up there that day, and it should be a good time. And Tom's really done well up in Methuen. I hate to blow his horn, but he's really the type of guy you want in your school. And Reggie Newcomb's working with kids all these years, has grown some good men around the town, and we hope that they have a good game, and anybody gets to go up and see it, say hello, and I'm sure we can catch it on live stream somewhere. That's all I got.
Thank you,
Oh,
Eric.
by the way, I was the reason I didn't go to the police thing, I was ducking tornadoes in Pennsylvania. There was about 5 of them within 30 miles all around us. But we were safe, actually, so it was pretty cool.
Thank you, Larry.
All right.
Vice Chairman Nyman?
I do not have any comments tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So this past Saturday, Doug and I went down to the police station for Rockland Police Appreciation Day. It was the second annual Police Appreciation Day, and we got a tour of the building and got to talk to some of the officers and the chief. And I think it's one of those things that you see these things happening nationally with other police departments. One of the reasons why we started this tradition was to make sure that our officers knew that we stood by them. And although these things may happen elsewhere, it's never happened here. And it's always important to show people the appreciation for a job well done. And our department is 100%, it's an exemplary force. I say it all the time. I'd love to see society get back to a place where people stop looking up to professional athletes and they start looking up to the police and fire across their communities, because those are the real heroes. Those are the ones that put their lives on the line to protect the people in the town. And we need people to want to grow up to be police and fire. That's something that you don't hear as much anymore. So I think it's a great tradition. I'm glad we got to do it for a second year in a row. Hopefully next year, maybe without COVID. Hasn't happened yet, but knock on wood, maybe.
We'll see.
But with that said, we've got another one coming up. We've got on October 2nd is Firefighter Appreciation Day in town, which actually segues really well into Fire Safety Week, which is the following week. So, get out and show your appreciation to both your police and fire departments, because they're really really treasures in this town, and we should really appreciate them every day. So, with that said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session to review and approval of executive session minutes 5/18/21, 6/1/21, 6/15/21, 7/13/21, and 8/10/21. And for purpose number 6, to consider the purchase and exchange of lease or value of real property, map 82, lot 16.
Motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Penny?
Yes.
Ms. Needham?
Yes.
Ms. Nyman?
Yes.
And myself. Thank you.